Can you believe it is episode 3 already? Welcome to episode 3. Holy shit of the Screaming Idiots show. I want to thank each and every one of you for the level of streams that episode 2 got in one day. Had a huge day 1. To put a little context on that, episode 2 got the same amount of streams in one day that episode 1 got in a week. And we added 5 new states in which we were being streamed in, and that is fucking awesome. And we want to say thank you to each and every one of you guys. Because that, without you guys, we wouldn't have a podcast. So I know from myself, Tyler, Preston, all of us, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, definitely. It makes us real motivated to keep doing this, and this is fun.
It's a blast, and the interaction that you guys give with us or have with us is incredible. I mean, we just went live on TikTok for about 30 minutes and had some incredible interaction with some of you guys that have been listening to the podcast and some that haven't listened to it at all but are going to now. So if it wasn't for you guys, we would not be doing this. So let's jump right into this open segment. And Tyler, you kind of teed off what we're going to talk about here real quick, and the fact of, you know, all this interaction. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't keep going. But we've gotten so much great feedback and so many positive reactions that we've got some big news, and there is some big things coming on the horizon for us in this podcast. And I want to start with, I'm sure you guys have noticed that we changed our logo a little bit. You know, the first one that we did was just kind of something we threw together real quick because you got to have something to put on there when you upload a new podcast, and it wasn't really what we were going for. So we did a little redesign, and I'm sure you guys have noticed that now. And the more we sat there and looked at it, we thought, yeah, that's great for right now, but is that really what we want this podcast to be? And then we started thinking, is this just going to be a podcast, or is this going to be a brand? And that thought came from a lot of listeners, you guys out there, reaching out to me or Tyler or Preston and saying, hey, have you guys ever thought about doing merch? Do you guys have a website? Asking certain questions like that got us thinking, is this just going to be a podcast, or is this going to be bigger than that? And the three of us have always done everything to the fullest extent that we can. We don't half-ass anything. So with that being said, we are in the process of having a full-blown, badass graphic designer working on our new and final logo and rebranding that we will be stapling to this show and everything that we do from here on out. And I'm not gonna talk about too much what it's gonna look like. We have an idea, but we still don't know exactly how it's gonna come out. But it is gonna be fucking awesome, and it will really, you know, envelop who we are as people and who this show, you know, what this show is and is going to be. And with that comes things like a new website that we're in the process of working on, and also the merch piece, because we've had several people ask, hey, if you have a t-shirt line, I would wear that. And we're like, that's metal as fuck. Because we would wear it too.
I love it. So
once this new logo gets designed, we're going to start cranking out, you know, some merch for you guys. And we hope that you are interested in wearing it and representing, you know, the brand that is the Screaming Idiots show, not just the podcast. We want to take this as far as it'll go. And, you know, we're not in this for making money. We're in this for bringing music,
building a community,
especially, you know, hard rock and heavy metal music, because the brotherhood, and we've talked about this on earlier shows, and I had some people, you know, on TikTok mention, I love how you talked about the brotherhood of metal. And that's exactly what it is. And that's what we're trying to do with this show. It's about bringing this type of music to anyone who's willing to listen, because it is so special. And we have such a deep passion for it. So be on the lookout for that. The new website, the new logo, merch, all of that. And you guys will get details as we develop this stuff. So we won't keep you in the dark. I promise you that. we're also working on, this is going to sound cheesy, a theme song. Yes, we are working on writing a theme song for the show that we can play at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, wherever we want, without having to worry about infringing on some other band's copyright, because we don't want to get sued. So, a lot of big things coming down the pipeline. I don't want to spend any more time on this, but I just wanted to give you guys something to think about and look forward to. So, moving on, let's talk about Screaming Evidence and what is next for you guys as a band.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in order to really talk about what's next for the band, have to sort of discuss a little bit of where we've been, how far we've come. What are you shaking your head for? Okay, we're going to keep going. Technical difficulties, apparently. Hey, you have those at shows too, right? So...
Yeah, we are not new to this, but the podcast side, we're definitely new to it. So
yeah, so we're trying some video, and Kyler shit in the bed.
He is scrambling over here, y'all. Scrambling.
Yeah. So we that's an epic fail. This is growing pains that come with a new podcast. I was attempting to record this for YouTube, and my phone is not wanting to cooperate. So we'll work on that. Continue.
Yeah, we will work on that. So I guess, for Screaming Evidence, we've been using the name now for probably 12 years. And so Screaming Evidence, the name came from Sean. He's the one that came up with the name. And we were back in high school. So I was in 10th grade. Sean was a senior, living in a house of his own with a buddy of ours, Robbie. And his house was just the place to go where we would jam. And I'd be there on school nights even. We'd be up until 3, 4 in the morning just jamming. And that was our life, at that time. And we were writing songs. I mean, I'd stay up with Sean way later than I am really capable of. And we would just be writing music. And I didn't have a lot of influence on the lyrics or anything like that. That was more Sean. But I played a lot of the guitar, and there was a lot of nights where I would sit there and play the same part over and over for hours so this dude could write lyrics to it. And so Sean came up with this name, Screaming Evidence, and it started with just me and Sean on acoustic guitars. And you could still go back on YouTube and find some of those videos of us, these little high school kids, just jamming on these acoustics.
Wearing
and I remember
Hurley shirts and baggy shorts.
And I remember the first night we posted stuff on YouTube. So YouTube was just like this thing that was catching on, and people were realizing that you can upload your own content. And this was back in the MySpace days too. So we posted a few videos, and we stayed up all night recording these videos, trying to get a perfect take. And it was miserable, dude. We were in his basement just jamming for like 8 hours straight, trying to get a few videos to post. And we posted these videos, and that next day we spent the whole day on his family computer, the desktop, and we're just hitting people up on MySpace like, hey, check this out. And we had like 100+ views on each video within the first day, and we were so fucking juiced. And it was the coolest feeling in the world. We thought we were amazing, and we really weren't. But but the people thought the songs were cool, and they liked it. And so, from there we ended up meeting Scotty and another guy that we played with, and these guys were older. So Scotty's like 10 years older than me. And
do the listeners know who Scotty and Sean are?
Yeah, so Scotty is the drummer. we started playing with them, and that's when we really took it to electric guitars. And we took some of these songs that we had written and put them on the electric, and that's kind of what we started with. And as a group, we started writing other songs, more in that setting. And so immediately you seen a shift in the sound and the type of writing of the music. And, fast forward several years, I go off to the Navy, hiatus.
Booyah, Navy.
Yeah. While I was in the Navy, so do you guys remember Skype?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Wasn't
back,
Skype was just the OG Zoom.
yeah, and so the quality was terrible, audio quality was terrible, video was terrible, and the lag was atrocious. And so I remember sitting on my computer while I'm down where I was stationed, and I'm sitting on the computer with Sean on Skype, and he's showing me these songs that he's writing, and I'm trying to learn these songs through Skype, and I tell you, it was hard. And we
Right,
tried to play the songs together, and it just didn't work. And so there was like this different shift in the sound and the songwriting of the music for Screaming Evidence. And when I got back from the Navy, Sean and Scotty had linked up for about a year and were jamming again. And so I come back into this thing where they had started writing some other songs. I was trying to learn them, some on Skype, and then also when I actually got back, I had to quickly learn these songs. And within a few months of being back, we were playing shows again.
Yeah, it came on you quick.
Yeah, and then
That sounded dirty.
yeah, it
Came
did.
on you quick.
But
Oh.
from there, there's another shift in the songwriting and the style and the sound. And for the past 7 years, we have been further developing that sound, further developing the songwriting, and we have probably 30, maybe 40 original songs that we've cycled through, some that we play, some that we don't. There's a lot that we don't play anymore. There was a lot of songs that we wrote and just didn't really do anything with, or they just really, really weren't that great, or we just couldn't figure out how to finish it, and so they just kind of died out. And the kind of final step is when we added Preston. And so since Preston's been on board, we have this other guitarist with a completely different influence than what Sean and I had, and his being more metalcore. We've seen how our style has again changed.
Evolved, really.
Right. And so we're at this point now where we have some decisions to make, and there may be some difficult decisions we have to make. But really it's coming down to the stuff that we're writing now is so far beyond what we were writing 12 years ago, 10 years ago, even 7 years ago. It is so far beyond that, and the problem is because we're putting so much more effort into writing the songs, into making sure that they are of the highest quality that we can possibly come up with. We're being more intentional with the parts rather than, Sean bringing a guitar part and some vocals, and then everyone just kind of do what they feel is right, whether it's right or wrong.
Right.
And so we're being more intentional. We're taking more time with writing the songs. We're not just going with the first thing that sounds good to go with it. And, we have several songs that we're still finishing, but because that style has changed so much and because the sound is starting to change so much, it's almost like, do we abandon a lot of the songs that we don't play anymore? And do we decide to take down the music that we have up reproduce what we like from that, what still fits with us, and then also produce a new album with the new songs that we've been writing, and then put that out there as well. And, you know, part of that dilemma too is just, you know, the recording quality. You know, if anybody has listened to this podcast and then went and listened to Screaming Evidence, you'll notice, as far as quality of recording goes, it's not much different than most local bands that you may listen to. And so it's not this thing that would pop up randomly in your iTunes shuffle or something like that you would just be blown away by. And so we also have to make that decision. Do we scrap all this old stuff and really put a ton of focus into writing something new, putting together new albums, and putting those out there and making them as legit as fucking possible so that we actually stack up against other up-and-coming artists and not so much looking like a local band like we always have.
Yeah, and I think you guys are going through what every band does. And what I mean by that is, if you notice, almost every band of prominence goes through not necessarily a genre change, but a difference in style. And I'll use one of my all-time favorite bands as an example, you know, Bullet for My Valentine, right? So they are what I consider one of the pioneers of modern-day metalcore. And their first several albums were similar in style. You know, a lot of different songs and whatnot, but very similar in style. Tone was different on each album, blah, blah, blah. But their last three, really, have been considerably different.
Mm-hmm.
And shifting away from that traditional metalcore vibe, if you will, and getting into a more, I don't know exactly how to describe the exact
refined
feel to it. Yeah,
sound?
refined, not touchy-feely, but just they're a lot different than those past couple albums. And you guys, as Screaming Evidence, are kind of in the middle of that right now, where it's you've got to have these internal discussions of, hey, where do we go from here? And I think you put it perfectly, Tyler, when you said, you know, when you added Preston, it brought a whole different dynamic into the band. And you guys have been adapting to that in a good way. And now you're trying to figure out, oh, man, you know, some of this shit that Preston's writing or is inspired by or whatnot is really cool. And I think that started when Preston started writing his own parts into songs you guys had already written.
Yep.
And there's songs that Preston brought, like Cadence. So if anyone's come to one of our live shows in the last 2 years, they would have heard Cadence. And that song is it's a jam.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was something that Preston wrote. And then Sean wrote lyrics to it. I wrote a bass part to it. And Scotty put the drums in. And it just, all the pieces came together very well. And it's a great song. And that was kind of the first song that Preston had a huge influence in writing, because up to that point, most of the songs
I was learning.
He was learning
And
these
maybe
songs.
adding
They were
some
already
layers
written.
too.
Yeah, and you were adding some sweet layers to them. And I remember sitting in this garage with you for fucking hours. Teaching you the rhythms to the songs. And at that point, I had been playing the bass for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like trying to relearn these fucking songs.
Yeah. It was a
And then
struggle at
teach
first.
you.
Yeah.
And then there was a few of the newer songs that we had written as a three-piece, you know, again, to that style change when we were a three-piece for a while. We wrote a few songs that were very new metal feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then you came in and added some layers to them that were just fucking great. And so I guess I would really like to hear your take on, you know, where you see the band going from here.
Yeah, so I think I'm coming up on, has it been 5 years?
5 years?
5 years since
4 or
I've been in
5?
the band?
I want to say.
If I'm
I think that sounds
around
right.
5 years. So of course the first year and a half, maybe even 2 years, was me learning the band's older songs or songs that were developing at the time, and maybe adding some pieces to, adding some layers to. But in between me learning those songs, we like to jam together.
Right.
So Scotty being another quote unquote metalhead of the group, me and him would sit here and I would write a riff and we would just go nuts to these specific riffs, and try to introduce it to you and Sean as well to see how we can make a real song out of it. And with us just messing around, it felt as if right then we all noticed maybe a little bit of a style change. And with that, as time has gone on, I don't know the word to describe the style change by any means. But at the same time, maybe a slightly heavier feel, slightly more intricate feel. But with that, no, it's been really cool as of late. I hope we get all these new songs together and people get an idea of the new style that we're after, or that's being created, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, because you don't want to, and you guys have always been, hey, we don't want to be just like every other metal band out there, right? We want to be unique and be inventive and have our own unique sound and feel and not be a cookie cutter band.
Well, here's the thing. Screaming Evidence did not start as a metal band.
Correct.
We were hard rock at best, and a lot of that's because of the songs that Sean and I started with, bringing them from acoustic songs to electric songs and changing from full chords to bar chords and things like that. You know, when we first were playing, it was very much like same stuff. I mean, it was
strummed out choruses,
strummed out chords, strummed out verses. Yeah. The only metal element we had was Scotty and this other guy that was playing guitar, that was with the band for a little while. And so we had this metal feel to us because of the drum part Scotty would have. And then everything else was very rock. And up until probably recently, 90% of the songs that we have written as a band started on the acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Like Sean and I wrote the riff on an acoustic and then we moved it to electric. And so we were definitely writing some heavy ass riffs for like breakdowns and things like that, but it was never really intended to be metal. But we did have a heavy nu metal influence with like Korn and Deftones and, you know, bands like that. And then also we were very influenced by hard rock bands like Seether, Breaking Benjamin, Chevelle,
Smile Empty Soul,
things like that.
Incubus.
Incubus. We played a lot of Incubus on the acoustic guitars. You know what I mean?
Shout out Incubus, baby.
They jam. But like, we were never really intended to be metal, and that actually has caused issues for Scotty because
Yep.
You know, Scotty's always asking us for some heavier shit. And we've had to have these conversations with Scotty like, look, man, that's just not what the band is. And when we added Preston, I feel like Scotty walks in the room with a boner.
There was two of him. He had two voices.
Yeah, so when, like, in between songs or before practice while we're still waiting on Sean because, you know,
the singer's always late.
Singer's always late, and it's not even fashionable anymore. But he just walks
Sorry,
in.
Sean, that was those guys, not me.
Hey, I'll stab at Sean all day. That dude shows up late in sweatpants and fucking slip-ons
and
with
still
socks
fucking
on.
jams.
Yep. And then doesn't say a word. Just shows up, plugs his shit in, and then just starts going.
Janky ass pedal
I
board.
haven't had a conversation with Sean in 4 years. He just shows up, jams, and leaves.
He sounds like fucking Axl Rose.
But, I mean, Scotty now has another metalhead. Preston will just riff around, and Scotty will throw some shit together, and we've written some songs out of some of that just playfulness, and that's the fun part of writing music is
Fuck
how
yeah,
playful it can be, and we're just
I
kind of
think that's
dicking
the
around.
beauty in it.
Dude,
And-
I still play the same riffs that I dicked around with 10 years ago. Because you remember that shit when you're just pricking around.
And one thing I would love to hear, and I've heard Preston talk about it briefly, but I've never really heard him go deep on this. So, Preston, first band you've played with.
Yep.
When you came to us, you admitted that you had issues with putting together songs. You loved
Yep.
putting riffs together,
Yep.
but you never really thought about putting them together as songs. And how would you say you have developed in the 4 years that you've been in the band around being a songwriter rather than just a musician, just
A
noodling
guitar player
on
or riff
guitar?
writer. Yeah, so that was a very hard part for me to it was a hard experience. Just because it was, once I started running around hanging out in the garage with you guys and watching you jam, it was finally I had a group of people that I could jam with. Didn't have a group of guys that I really, other than Kyler, of course. Me and him grew up playing guitar.
Yeah.
Teaching
Teaching each other how to play guitar, man.
teaching each other how to play the
Our
guitar
parents used to cart us around to each other's houses. We would just jam.
all weekend long.
That old
Yes.
Oh,
Strat and
you
that-
had a parent to drive you around?
Yeah.
That's nice.
No,
Not that my parents weren't there. Look, I would have to.
Daddy wasn't there.
I would carry my acoustic guitar in its case from one end of town to the other end of town
That's
just to
metal
meet
as
up with
fuck.
Sean, because Sean will be like, "Hey, bro, come over and jam." I'm like, "But, bro, it's hot out."
But
and he's like,
cigarettes.
and Sean's got this weird power of persuasion. He can convince
does.
you to do
He does.
anything. If
You know who else
if
has
he
that?
set out,
You motherfucker.
I don't know about that, but if he really was set on watching you fuck an elephant, he could convince you to fuck an elephant. Like this dude, I'd be like, dude, it is hot. It is 105 degrees outside, and you want me to walk across town carrying this fucking guitar? And he's like, yep.
I
And
mean,
would
and you
just-
did it, didn't you?
And I did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. You guys
Sean,
were jamming.
in case y'all don't know, Sean is a very interesting creature, and you'll find out at some point.
It's not even a
God
human
bless his
being.
wife. She is a sweetheart.
Yeah, she is.
Oh, me and Shay got some history. We're like brother and sister, and I've given her a couple of heart attacks. I'm pretty sure.
So I
You've given
guess
me
to
a
get
couple words.
slightly back on topic, no, it was cool, and it was a neat experience at the time, and I was not a songwriter going into it. By no means was I a songwriter. I would sit here and write riffs all day long, but I could never put together a song. And I've told you, Tyler, several different times, and I've had conversations with other people, but the best thing I ever did for myself as a musician was start playing with a band, because it made me understand how things come together. Whether it's starting with the drums and a guitar riff, or it's starting with the bass, or Sean has a line of vocals that he wants to roll with. But as time has went on, we talk about this shift or this change. What I think has been really cool for us, it feels like all of our personal influences are finally starting to come together. And I'm sure 10 years down the road, 5 years down, however many years, we'll say that again. But the Incubus feel, the Deftones feel, the super
Smile,
heavy,
Empty Soul, Seether, all that stuff that was there in the beginning.
Yeah.
Scotty's very much into those new metal bands. He's a maggot. I mean, he's
Yeah,
got
yeah.
the Slipknot tattoo on
Yep.
his calf.
Yep.
you know, that's his influence. And when metalcore was first coming out, he was jamming he was playing to Kill Switch and
Yep.
Bullet for My Valentine.
Mm-hmm.
Bullet was one of the heaviest bands I listened to when I was 16, because that's when we met Scotty and them, and that's what he was listening to, was that metalcore stuff. And you know, he's bringing all that flavor in there with the metal drums. You're bringing the metalcore.
Mm-hmm.
I just groove.
And that's what
Just groove.
that's what I think is so cool right now, is it feels like there's this, in the verses of our songs, or maybe the bridges of our songs, there's this specific groove that you may not hear in say a metal song, but there's also these parts throughout the song that make you want to kick somebody's door down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do feel as if things have gotten a little more aggressive as time has gone on, but we've also delved into some ambient, spacier, groovy stuff as well. And it feels like it's not finally starting to come together, but it feels like we're kind of all on the same wavelength as of late.
Yeah.
As well. So no, I'm extremely excited. We have like 6 new songs that are still not finished, but each one is different, completely different, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it encapsulates us as a band.
Yeah, I mean, it really, it shows the progress, and that's what I've loved about the band, and why I could never leave the band, because Screaming Evidence isn't just this band that popped up and is throwing some songs together and playing some live shows, and after, you know, a couple of years, members start disliking each other, or life gets in the way, so, you know, a member leaves, and then it just cycling through members until the band just gives up. And that's what I see a ton with local bands. I've seen several local bands that had really good music and maybe a really good shot to do something. They just couldn't fucking stay together.
Mm-hmm.
And we have really withstood the test of time, particularly Sean, Scotty, and myself. And I will say you are the greatest addition to that core that we were really missing. And I'd say part of that was me kind of swallowing some pride,
Mm-hmm.
because I always wanted to be the guitarist.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
That's what I wanted to do, and I switched to bass out of necessity
For the band.
And
The
you have
band,
always said that. Like
Yes.
it was a move. It was a selfless move for the band.
It was.
yeah, because
And that was before
I got
that was
so
before I was
sick
with the band.
of dealing with different musicians, and anyone that is a musician and trying to put together bands and actually play shows and stuff know how difficult it is to find dedicated musicians that will actually show up and then be fucking sober when they're here.
But also
Or-
creative and talented as
Right.
well.
And so we had this issue where
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Mm.
So we had this issue where we couldn't find a bass player that was both good and sober. And I was like, well, I can do both. And so I started playing bass, and when we first started playing with like Scotty and that other dude, I actually started as the bass player, just so that I can, you know, stay with the project. And I later went back to playing guitar, and the first album we really put out, I was playing the guitar on that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what I would do is when we first got together, I would play some songs with the guitar and then some songs with the bass until we found a bass player, and then I would sit in this fucking garage with somebody for hours and hours and hours on end teaching them the bass, and either they couldn't do it or they wouldn't do it because they weren't fucking sober enough to pay attention to what the fuck I was teaching them, or there was a combination of things where like they wouldn't come to shows prepared. They were using my fucking equipment. It was hell. And I told the guys after we kicked the last guy out, I was like, I'm just going to play the bass. We're going to be a 3-piece, and we're going to fucking deal with it.
Right.
I said, I'm not dealing with any new members because I'm the one that has to teach them everything. I'm not fucking doing it anymore. We're going to be a 3-piece. And that's what we did for years. And then Preston started coming around, and he just, without any kind of push, he was asking to learn the songs. And for me, after he showed up to a few practices and then he was starting to ask me the riffs and how to play them, I was like,
This dude actually gives a shit.
I've seen this dude play. He can write some killer riffs. I can see that he can play. I'm really confident that if we brought him in the band, he seems like a better lead guitarist than me. So it would make more sense to have him be the lead guitarist. I would just have to teach him a lot of shit with our songs. I'm comfortable on the bass. We'll just run it. And I talked to the other guys about adding Preston on, and they were cool with it. They didn't give a fuck, to be honest.
Scotty loved it.
Scotty was like, "Hell yeah, man, bring him on."
Because he had some help, you know. It's
Well, I don't
when
know
you're
if
the
help-
only guitarist,
yeah.
there is zero fucking room for error in a live show.
Well, and I think Scotty was in this mundane state just because.
Oh, did you say Scotty or Sean?
Scotty.
Well, Sean,
Scotty, yeah, I'm
both
sorry.
of them were really cool about it, but both of them also knew that it was going to be me that was going to teach you. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they were like,
Right.
it doesn't hurt us at all. So you know, but you know, since then it's been awesome having you on, man, and
Appreciate that.
you know, watching the style change and being able to, you know, like we were dealing with earlier, I'm able to envision a riff or a direction for a song, and you and I are able to communicate in a
Mhm.
way that you can bring it to life when I can't.
Yeah.
And that's pretty fucking awesome too. Because I don't play enough guitar. I'm not good enough at guitar to really put the riffs that I think of in my head onto the guitar all the time. And so you being someone that can really
Not
helps.
always.
Not always, but we come up with it. And being able to have the two guitarists that are very competent on the guitar, and they're not just one of these guys that can only play fucking chords
Yeah.
and strum a little bit. Two guys that can really play guitar. Sean can play guitar and sing really well. And so we're able to add the layers to the music that we need to be more interesting than what we have been in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that was a very important change in our music and our writing style. And, you know, so when we talk about what's next for Screaming Evidence, it's very much we're in the process of writing songs that are on a different level than what we have dealt with in the past. They are much more difficult to play. They are much more difficult to put together. They're going to be much more difficult to record. But the end result is going to be more along the lines of something that will stack up against other up-and-coming artists and actually give us a chance to do something with the music. And we just have to we have to decide, you know, what we're going to do from here on the business side of things to really make something happen. And I think a big part of that has been adding Preston to the band.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to close that portion of it out, because I know we want to move on to the other parts of the show. From fans and listeners, I've heard several different comparisons, because you always want to compare that sound to somebody
It's human
else.
nature. You're going to compare it to
Yeah.
somebody else. Yep.
For the listeners, in case they were interested in going and listening to us, hopefully when the new stuff comes out, and no, we don't have a timetable on that as of now, but what would you describe our new sound or direction as if there was a comparison? Because I have mine.
I would say to compare it to a sound or a style, you would have to say multiple bands just
Yeah.
because of the way we've drawn influence from multiple bands. So
Yep.
we still have some of that core element with the Breaking Benjamin, Seether, some of the Incubus, and I say Incubus because I pull a lot of my influence with how I play
bass.
the bass
Yes.
off of what I heard in Incubus, and Sean has been compared to
Yes.
that guy,
Yep.
their lead vocalist, so many
something, I
times.
believe.
I don't know people's names, so I just lead singer for Incubus. Sean sounds like you, bro. But you know, we've seen developments in me being able to bring some of the screaming element, and I sound a little bit more towards the Norma Jean
Mhm.
side. I'm
More
nowhere
raw.
near the screamer that dude is, because it'll take me 10 years to get to that level. But you know, more along those lines rather than where we started, more of like a punk just yeah thing. I mean, so you still have some of that core element. I would also say we bring in some of the metalcore riffage, like the Polaris and Wage War, and like Moss to Flames and stuff like that
Mhm.
through your guitar.
Mhm.
And Scotty's still bringing in those metal drum parts. And we also have some of that ambient stuff going, kind of like Mood Ring or Deftones.
Yep.
A lot of underlying
like that.
shit.
Yeah.
So,
Kyler, what would you say?
Yeah, so I mean the evolution, right? So when you think about
And frankly, you haven't heard a lot of the new stuff as of
yeah,
late.
so the brand new stuff I haven't heard a lot of outside of a few riffs, right?
Yeah,
So, you know, when you think about how and I want to do this quick so we can move on here, but the style change it has been very apparent, and you go from the very, you know, hard rock feel to putting in some unclean vocals, and then you add Preston and you start adding some melodic riffage and a lot of underlying solos in a verse or a chorus that, you know, completely changes the sound and feel to a song. And as you guys have progressed, and you know, Sean is starting to kind of, you know, we were sitting here before we recorded the pod, and you're playing a riff that Sean wrote that if you wouldn't have told me any different, I'd have thought you wrote it.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
it sounds just like your style. And I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
that sounds like something we would have played 10 years ago together.
Yeah.
Granted, it was something that it would have taken me a week to learn how to play. But.
It's made up of chords that Sean wouldn't have played 3 years ago.
Correct. So there is definitely
Right.
an evolution of the band and a growth of each individual member into different comfort zones, right? And that is all part of adapting and becoming a more mature band, if you
Yeah.
will. And I
Yes.
don't mean mature in the sense of literal maturity, but I mean in the sense of open-mindedness and
Yep.
willingness to adapt.
the
and
music has matured.
Yeah, and do some things different and understand, hey, we cannot keep doing the same thing if we want to get better. You guys not only want to make good music, but you want to become better, well-rounded, more in-depth musicians. So your songwriting has reflected that. And I think that fans of the band have noticed that, and
I know they have. Yeah.
I promise you they have.
Yep.
And new listeners can go back through your catalog of music, and which is all available anywhere you want to hear your music, and
Quick little plug.
be a part. Oh, I'm always going to plug the band, and be a part of that journey and that growth, and understand what we're saying, what we've been talking about for the past half an hour, because it's very apparent when you listen to the music. So I think you guys described that perfectly, and I think there's a lot of good things on the horizon for Screaming Evidence, and you know, it goes hand in hand with what we talked about our show and the business side of it. And it's a growth journey, and there's growing pains, and you learn through failures. And just like us trying to video record this motherfucker tonight, and my phone's like, storage is full. Well, all right, I guess I'll just go fuck myself.
Yeah, I think to close it out, I think the coolest part of this podcast, well, not the coolest, but one part of this podcast is it's a way to keep us accountable
Right.
as Screaming Evidence.
You guys have
It's
been
like,
very vulnerable about
if
things
we're
here
going to
tonight,
mention
so.
Screaming Evidence
Mhm.
on this show, we need to be doing some work on the back end.
Well, let's be fair. The name of this podcast came from a parody name of the band. That
Right.
Tyler, your grandmother refers to your band
As
to
the
band
Screaming Idiots.
as the Screaming Idiots. So this podcast, in essence, is somewhat of an extension, not only because two members of the band are co-hosts, and we will have all members as guests in the future. But this podcast is meant to be, an area where you guys can get vulnerable and be honest with each other about the band and where, you feel like you can improve, where you have succeeded, where you have failed, all of the above. And it's just a great opportunity to put it out there in the open, right?
Yep.
And no, this isn't just a podcast to plug the band and get you guys that are listening to this show to listen to the music.
Not at all.
It is an opportunity for these two guys to put it all on the table, be honest with each other, and keep moving forward with the band.
Well, it's like this. I mean, if you consider all musicians out there, we're relating with the 90%.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Only maybe 10% are out there really doing it for a living and really making something of themselves.
They're very few and far between.
We relate with the 90% that's trying to get to that point, and maybe some life circumstances gotten in our way to where we haven't really pushed that hard in that arena. But I mean, for every musician, it's the same dream, being able to do music for a living. And, with Screaming Evidence, it's always been about the product, in business terms, we've always been very heavy on the product being the music. And even with this podcast, I mean, I was really kind of questioning. I'm like, what is it about this podcast that people seem to be liking? Because we keep hearing the same thing. It's relatable. People are loving the discussions that we're having, the topics, the content within the topics. And really, it comes down to a simple concept. How many true music fans out there don't have someone that they can talk to deeply about the music they listen to?
Yes, because
if
let's
I didn't
be
have
honest,
you two
and
or a couple other guys
we
in
have
my
a
circle,
top. I'm sorry, Preston, I didn't mean to
no,
cut you
you're
off there.
good.
But we have a topic coming up that's really going to touch on that because, and we'll get to it in Heavy Metal Hot Takes, but, metalheads largely for years have been shunned
Outcast.
for several reasons, and we'll get to it. You guys hang on tight. We're going to get to a good topic. This is actually from a TikTok fan. I shouldn't say fan. A follower and a listener of the show that recommended this topic, but we'll get to it. So, we believe that us as metalheads have for years been labeled as, in a way, Preston, you said it best, outcasts. So, we created this podcast from the idea of we don't want to just build a podcast. We want to build a brand
Community.
that stands as a community
Yep.
for the brotherhood of hard rock and heavy metal music. And in a way, I feel
And
like
all there in between.
exactly. And it's
Yeah.
not, because we're fans of all types of music.
Yeah.
But, we feel that this show is that vessel
Yep.
by which we come together as a community of music fans to really discuss what it is that, because I know I speak for all three of us when I say that other than our family and our friends, music is the most important thing in our life.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
I know a lot of you guys and gals out there listening to this right now feel the exact same way. And I want you all to, I'm going to get a little emotional here. I want you all to know that this is the quote unquote safe space for you to come and listen and feel important and accepted and know that you are not the only ones out there that feel so passionate about the music that you care about and how it impacts and changes your life, because there are so many bands and songs and albums out there
For some people, it's all they have.
that
man.
have literally changed our fucking lives.
Yes.
And that, we are all musicians. We all play instruments. We all, I'm obviously not in a band or anything, but I play guitar every day. I'm a quote unquote, I know I say that a lot, quote unquote, but musician in a way, and it's my escape, it's my passion, It's your guys' escape and passion. I know a lot of you listen feel the same way, so that's where this show was created out of, is to provide a space for this community to come together and interact and talk about music and feel like you're a part of something. And we want all of you guys out there listening to feel like you are a part of the show, because you are. We hear you. We want all of your interaction and suggestions and requests and feedback, because we are a community. We are a brotherhood, a sisterhood, and it's all one big group of
Yep.
passionate people.
Absolutely.
Mic drop.
Absolutely. It's got me hyped.
So yeah, man. So I know
And these are conversations we have on a daily basis, and we were finally
we've had it, and we've had
But,
these
but
conversations.
not
Like,
everybody.
fuck it.
But not everybody gets to have those conversations.
Exactly.
Because not everybody has this kind of friend group, right? That,
Right.
that gets
Yep.
together and plays music together and
Yep.
writes music together and just spends every day in a group chat talking about music and dissecting music
Yep.
because it's one of the biggest things in our life.
Yep.
So, and the people that are listening to this that think, oh man, that's cheesy. This isn't the show for you.
Exactly.
But I know that the people that have made it this far into the show, episode 3, 45 minutes in, you guys don't feel that way. You don't feel that it's fucking cheesy. You're like, fuck, I relate to that shit, man. I feel that. And that's why we have this show. So, thank you all so much for being a part of this community with us. Because that's exactly what it is. It's a fucking community, and you guys are the best. So, that was a great open segment. I think we talked about a lot of awesome things that are on the horizon for not only the podcast and the brand that is the Screaming Idiots that we're building, but also Screaming Evidence, and the brand and direction you guys are trying to build. And I think there's a lot of really good things in the future for both of those elements. So,
Yeah, definitely.
all right. So now we're going to move on to, kind of the main theme of this show outside of the open segment. And this came from not just us, the three of us talking together, actually, over dinner about, hey, what are we going to talk about? But, I had a follower on TikTok who is a really, what I consider, a good friend now. Him and I have had quite a few discussions over the past couple weeks. My buddy over at Metalcore Highlights on TikTok, his handle is @Metalcore Highlights. He mentioned this topic to us too. So it was kind of funny that we were all three kind of thinking the same thing, and then my buddy over at Metalcore Highlights suggested it too. But we're going to talk about Like Moths to Flames.
Ooh.
Yeah. And, this is a band that I feel, and I know that Preston and you, Tyler, as well, feel the same way, that is really underrated and that has had a, in the same vein of what we were just talking about with Screaming Evidence, has had a really big growth journey in their music from, album to album. And I guess that I just want to hear, from you guys first when it comes to Moths. What was your initial thought when you first started listening to them, and then as you started following them, Tyler, I know this is your personal favorite metalcore band, so you're gonna have a heyday with this one, and they are easily one of my favorite bands out there right now. So let's talk about why they're so underrated and just kind of how they've really honed their craft and continue to get better album over album.
Yeah. So for me, we've talked about it a few times where it was really when I first started hanging out with you guys that I started diving into metalcore. And one of the first bands I came across, and this was 4 years ago or so,
Yep.
and with that, Apple Music
I feel like
had
it's
the
been
option.
longer than that for some reason.
Well, I mean, it was around then, and maybe 4.5 years ago, something like that. But I would look up bands that were heavier bands, more along that metalcore, and I would go to similar artists, and I would just start diving into similar artists, and it would eventually take me down this rabbit hole, because back then Apple Music didn't do the thing that it does now, where I listen to albums, and so after an album plays, it'll just start shuffling through similar artists for me. Well, back then, that wasn't something Apple Music did, so I had to manually do that. And one of the first things I came across was the Dark Divine album, and I really loved the songs that were on it. And we've talked about it before, where when I listen to music, I'm really about this song. And so I really loved this album, and it wasn't something that I really talked about much in the group. I just kind of assumed that they knew who they were. I enjoyed listening to it, but it wasn't something I listened to all the time. And then the next album came out, and that was the No Eternity in Gold.
Yeah.
And
Was that
yes,
after?
I'm looking
Hold on,
at
real quick. That wasn't after?
That's the newest album. Dark
Right,
Divine was before
right.
that. Yep.
yeah, and so
There were a couple albums before.
Oh,
that. Yeah.
So that
Okay.
that album came out, and I remember
2020,
being
I
at
believe.
work, and
Yes,
Preston
2020.
Preston and I had a discussion about it because it had just released. Preston listened to it. He sent it to me. I listened to it, and we had this discussion, and I kind of made up a story in my head.
Okay.
All right, so this is interesting. So, listening to the Dark Divine album, the songs are amazing, but the production quality just wasn't. And I really
Correct.
didn't
Compared to
listen.
nowadays.
Compared to
Right.
Compared to nowadays.
Yeah, No Eternity in Gold.
Well,
Yeah.
even their stuff before that album was dirty as fuck.
Yeah, it was better.
But
Yeah.
I really didn't listen. I really didn't dive into that yet. And this new album came out, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, I wonder if like people just gave them a bunch of shit for their last album not being very heavy or not sounding like super
Uh-huh.
heavy, and seeing where metal and the kind of industry was going, where everyone's starting to get heavy, and they were just like, well, fuck you guys, we're gonna do it better than everybody. And so they just came out with that album
With No Eternity
and just
in Gold.
literally shit on everybody else
And
out
the-
there.
the-
That was the
EP that
first album.
followed.
That was the first album they had signed with UNFD as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're correct in that. Yeah.
And reason being, funny enough, we talked about it last show. The way
Before that, they were with Rise Records.
okay,
So they
okay.
went from Rise to UNFD.
Yeah,
between
so-
17 and 20.
So the way I had delved into No Eternity in Gold, that album, we talked about it on the last show, but almost every night before I go to bed, I lay down in my huggle. I
Get
put my
them
head.
motherfucking headphones on.
I swear to God, if
Bro,
y'all
that's
don't-
metal as fuck. You in a huggle with headphones on. That's metal as
I
fuck.
swear, man. And so I had listened to Like Moths to Flames before, but for whatever reason, back then they didn't do it for me like the We Came as Romans, the Memphis Mayfire, and whoever else
Back
had
when
did.
those dudes were
I-
legit metalcore.
I can't explain why. But when I was laying in bed one night, that No Eternity in Gold album had dropped, and I heard The Anatomy of Evil. And it had the similar production style to a band like Polaris, who is we've said it before, but my and Kyler's favorite band. But it had that refinedness, but also girth in the guitar tones.
It was so thick.
Yeah, it punched you straight
It
through the
was-
chest.
ugh.
Hit you in the chest. And it wasn't just one or two songs. I kept listening through the whole thing, and I'm like, holy shit, this fucking album is the real deal.
Right.
And then, of course, I brought this album to the guys, or maybe Kyler had already heard it, I'm not sure. But I know I had sent it to Tyler, and then as time went on, me and Tyler had discussions, and we got back into the Dark Divine album, and I was pissed at myself because I'm like, because I knew of the song Nowhere Left to Sink off of the Dark
Mhm.
Divine album.
It's a jam.
And I know, if I'm not mistaken, that's the song that kind of catapulted those guys. But I was pissed at myself because I'm like, why did I not realize how good of a fucking record Dark Divine was? Because the songs those are the best songs those guys had wrote.
They're
to me,
amazing.
Those songs are amazing. But something about the production and the refinedness and the girth of the guitar tones and everything else, No Eternity in Gold hit me like a freight train.
But it made you dive back into Dark Divine.
Yeah, oh yes.
So
Yeah.
I'll take credit for being the one out of the three of us that discovered Moths. So back in when Dark Divine dropped in 2017, I had just graduated college and I was still farming. And it was harvest and we were in the fields and I was just, I was in a machine, I was in a cab all day listening to music, and Tyler, you do the same thing. You're listening to a band, you scroll down at the bottom of Apple Music and you see similar artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had listened to every fucking song I had in my playlist by this point. It's November, we're almost done, and I'm looking for some new music. And I don't remember who the artist was, but I scrolled down to the bottom, and Like Moths to Flames was one of the similar artists, and I clicked on them, and they had just released the Dark Divine album. And the first song I heard was Nowhere Left to Sink. And I was like, holy fucking shit, this is incredible. And I just put that album on shuffle, on repeat for the rest of Harvest. And that's all I listened to in the cab of that tractor was Dark Divine, that album. And I became obsessed with those guys. And I sent them over to you guys. And, you know, I was in love with it. And
Well,
but
you
again,
didn't send it to me because I don't think we were hanging out.
I don't know if we
point.
were hanging out at that point yet.
I think that was like right before.
It was. So I loved it, but I agree with you, Preston. I thought, man, I just wish those guitars had a little bit more behind them. I wish that the production was the mix was a little better. And then they dropped No Eternity in Gold. And I'm like, I mean, it's almost fucking deathcore how heavy that album is. And it
was a lot. Yeah, to me, it was a lot. It was something about it, and I cannot put words to it, but something about it was different.
Listen, guys, we are working on, we got a good buddy of ours who's a lawyer. We are working on being able to play clips in this pod without getting sued for copyright infringement. So bear with us. We'll get there.
Definitely.
Growing pains. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that something about their style, specifically the No Eternity in Gold album, it was different than whatever else was out there at the time, and I don't know why it was. I can't put words to it.
We
but
weren't
it just
listening
felt
to Polaris
different.
at the time.
Yeah, but
they had just put out Dichotomy. It was, but we didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, but it was different than what I was listening to at the time. But because of the production and everything else I had already mentioned, like I said, it hit me like a freight train, and I was all in, man.
So I mean, for me, the reason I pick Like Moss to Flames as my favorite metalcore band, and you know, over the last few years of really listening and diving into even their older stuff, as far as like the songs, man, they write some of the best fucking songs.
They really do.
They do.
Yeah.
And
their song structure is immaculate.
I know you guys, you know, for you guys, Polaris is your favorite metalcore band. And I put Like Moss to Flames just a notch above them just because of their songwriting. I think their songwriting is amazing. I think Polaris is maybe more talented individually.
Correct.
And
I agree.
I think
they have some super creative songwriting, and they're incredible all around. But I think the songs that Like Moss to Flames puts together is just a touch better.
Yeah, and that's completely fair. And I will not argue with you at all there. Just because the standpoint of Moths is able to do so many different things when it comes to emotion. And we talked about that a lot on episode 2 about just the emotion of songs and whatnot. And when you think about a song like Nowhere Left to Sink, and then you think about a song like God Complex
they're completely different.
I mean, God Complex is one of the heaviest metalcore songs I've ever heard.
Yep.
And
I kind of want to rip my throat out just thinking about it.
So the guy I mentioned, Metalcore Highlights, posted a TikTok the other day with the song God Complex on it. And
Did he stab someone?
No, it was that scene from
I think you
the
missed
movie
an opportunity
or the movie
for a better TikTok video.
No, it was just wait. Did you ever watch the show? Did you ever watch the show The Boys?
The Boys.
Yeah, so yes. Okay, so Homelander, right? You know the scene where he like does the laser vision and cuts like 80 million fucking people in half?
Yeah.
He put God Complexes like cut off the head, like that part. He put he put the breakdown over Homelander massacring people.
It fits.
And I wanted to Metalcore Highlights, bro.
That's metal as fuck.
That's metal as fuck. I wanted to throw my phone through the
Metal
wall.
as fuck.
And so it was just I just that's probably my favorite. I don't know. Ugh, there's so many good songs on.
Mine's
No
Ameliorate. Oh,
that's
off
not,
of
that's,
No
that's off
Eternity
the EP.
I think mine is still Anatomy of Evil. But Killing What's Underneath.
Killing What's
right
Underneath is probably my favorite, but God Complex just sends me, bro. YOTM's really good too.
Yep.
But anyway, so like
Year of the Moths.
Yes. So
or the Moth, maybe.
Year of the Moth, yeah.
Yeah.
So that whole album is a no skip. They had 2 no skip albums in a row. Then they put out a no skip EP.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that EP is
legit. You know how rare it is to go banger after banger after banger and literally not have any skips. That is why I have so much respect for a band like that.
And Polaris.
They're
That's
just-
why we love
Polaris-
Polaris
that's the
so
same-
much.
They're
I'm
just
the
a
same
We
metal
way
don't
with
skip
Era,
a
machine.
single
too.
song.
They are a metal machine.
They are just a metal machine.
That's probably
Yep.
the best way to describe some of these bands we talk about.
That's
that
a
are
good
just
way to
that
put
are
it.
on a certain tier.
Yep.
You know, and
I,
Era
To us, at
I
least.
wish I was on that tier.
same dude. Era
To
is one of
us.
those bands for me too.
Okay.
You know, that's
yeah.
that's a metal machine. Their latest album was the same way, and I'm not trying to stray from Moths, but what I don't understand is and Metalcore Highlights mentioned this too, is why are they so underrated? You know, you don't hear a ton
That was
of people.
my hot take.
That was your, yeah, for sure. Is you know, you talked about my hot take that Dark Divine's technically really the better album,
Yeah.
but because No Eternity in Gold has better production, it ended up being the better album. So we've ruined both of our heavy metal hot takes. Good thing we have a good one from a TikTok follower, so we got a good one to cover. But and I'm sure Tyler, I think you've got a pretty solid thought. I thought you mentioned, but yeah, I
Maybe.
don't maybe. you're good luck topping last week, bro, because you about made us cry. So
I might make us cry again.
fuck around. So I don't understand why they are so underrated, and maybe people listening would be like, well, fuck, they're not underrated, they're killer, dude. And you're right, they are.
But they're not on the level of a Fit for a King, a Memphis Mayfire,
August Burns Red,
or at least
Parkway
it doesn't
Drive.
seem like it.
They're
It
not.
doesn't seem like it.
And Polaris is the same way. They're not on that level.
No, they're not.
In the eyes of the masses, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to piss off some people here, and that's fine. I do it on TikTok every week. There is metalcore, and then there's fucking radiocore, okay? So if you are a radiocore fan, I Prevail, Ice Nine Kills, Beartooth, Bring Me the Horizon, A Day to Remember.
New Bring Me the Horizon. Yeah.
New Bring Me the Horizon. Not death metal, Bring Me the
Right,
Horizon,
right.
like Chelsea Grin, that's Suicide Silence.
Amity Affliction.
Amity Afflictions, another. Yeah, any of those bands, if you're a fan of those, that's fine. There is nothing wrong with that.
We were.
We used to be fans of those
Yeah.
bands. Those bands are radiocore. Metalcore, you know, quote unquote metalcore has become a fad.
We
And
said that
I think
last
we said
show.
it last show.
Yep.
And that's great. I love that more people are listening to it. But those bands, especially Beartooth and I Prevail, I fucking hate them so much.
Do you
And
really?
I can't stand them.
I can dig into Beartooth some of their
I
stuff.
can't. Their
but
vocals are Beartooth's,
Tyler and I have had this conversation.
Beartooth's vocals are so bad it makes me want to cut my own wrists. But I swear to God,
Hey,
So-
Moz and Beartooth are from Columbus.
yes, they are correct. People also don't realize how many great metal bands come from Ohio. We talked about that before the show. But so
Shameless
if
plug
you
for
are
Ohio.
a fan of radiocore, as I call it, and yes, I know I'm probably pissing some people off, but again, this is just personal opinion. Don't take it too seriously. That's fine. But don't try to compare bands like I Prevail or Beartooth to something like Moths, Era, Polaris, Periphery, Veil of Maya.
They're just not on the same
They're
level.
not on the same talent level because they are not writing like I dare you to go listen to a Periphery instrumental. Just listen to one of the Periphery songs, and I'm not a huge Periphery fan at all, but they are so musically insane that it just melts your fucking brain. Put one of those songs up against a Beartooth song or an I Prevail song with no vocals and just listen to the music.
You'll be
you tell me-
bored.
you tell me who's more talented.
So, I guess to speak on it a little bit, I'm a fan of Beartooth up until their most recent album. I didn't think it was very good.
Yeah, I did not like it.
But like some of these bands that you may coin as radiocore, you know, I do like them because they write good songs.
Sure, absolutely.
And to me, they sound good. Like I like the rawness and kind of the punkiness of Beartooth that they kind of lost with that
That
last
is true.
album.
The punk
but, like,
element was big.
Yeah,
that was really
so-
cool.
For me, it kind of goes back to what we talked about on the first episode with some of these kind of pop formulas and the psychology around the masses of music listeners. And something like Beartooth is going to appeal to a wider range of an audience than like Moths to Flames is. And that's the sound, that's the style, it's all of it. But when you listen to the songs and you know some of the musical elements in a like Moths to Flames song, and then match it up to like I Prevail or Beartooth or some of these more popular bands, they just far surpass it. and it's because they far surpass it that they're not getting the recognition that they should, because most listeners out there don't dissect music to the level that
People like us do.
People like us do, and that's not.
And the
that's not
listeners
me.
most likely as well.
For sure.
If they're listening, that's probably what they do.
And that's not
Yeah.
me trying to sound like an elitist or anything like that.
Or a gatekeeper. Or, yeah,
Yeah, I
please,
mean,
please
it's-
don't get this twisted. We are not shitting on you if you like these bands. This is just our personal opinion.
Yeah, because I kind of like them too, but
Yeah.
it's some people think deeper into the music than others, and for me, I'm one of those people that think deeper into it. And what like Moss to Flames does, what Polaris does, what Era does, what these more elite bands do is just kind of over the head of the average listener.
It's the music craft, right? It's the song structure. It is the ability, or maybe not even the ability, but maybe the willingness to push the boundary of what a traditional song sounds like.
Mhm.
And I always go back to them, and they are not one of my bands that I listen to, but Periphery is one of the best examples of pushing the boundaries of what music is.
And they've been doing it a long time.
And they have, and at a very high elite level.
Yep.
And bands like Beartooth and A Day to Remember and I Prevail, they have captured a fantastic market. They are incredibly successful because they're so easy to listen to because they focus on traditional song structure and production.
Well,
and go ahead.
no, just very similarly compared to Nickelback in
Yes.
the, was it second episode?
Episode
yeah,
2.
yeah.
Yep.
Episode 2. It's kind of,
It's
out of
brilliant.
jealousy.
It is.
It's out of jealousy.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
You know, it's like,
I wish I could be as
because
successful
I
as I
love
Prevail.
a band like Amity Affliction. I
We used to
absolutely
love those dudes.
dude, Pittsburgh and all that album, whatever that was.
Seeing Ghosts, I believe, was the album.
Well, there was that one, but then there was Pittsburgh and whatever that was with that. Absolutely loved it. And then as my musical palette had expanded, that became old to
This
me.
could be Heartbreak is the album you're referring to. After
yeah, that was
then
good.
there's
It
Let
was
the
good.
Ocean, Chasing Ghosts, Let the Ocean Take Me, and This Could Be Heartbreak were incredible albums.
Yeah, they were good.
They were really good.
Yeah, and as time had went on, dude, it's like I don't want
Stagnant.
anything to do with
Stagnant.
that. Yeah, I don't want anything to do with that anymore. And that's not anything against those guys
No.
by any means.
They are incredibly talented. They are incredibly smart, and they
They found their niche.
They found
just
their
like
niche.
Nickelback, a band
those
like Nickelback.
dudes sell out massive shows
Yep.
all the time. They have made a lot of money. They have a ton of fans. And the bands that we, especially you and I, Preston, and now Tyler, getting more and more this way too.
Great.
The bands that we love don't have that. They don't have the huge, massive following that some of these, like the coin I termed radio core bands, have, because they're not they don't want to go with the herd.
They don't appeal to the masses.
No, they appeal to.
They're completely okay with it as well.
They are absolutely. Norma
Yep.
Jean's the same way.
Yes.
Norma Jean's been doing this shit for 25 years.
I think that's half the reason why I love them.
Me too, because
Yeah.
they're like, "Fuck you! Don't play me on the. Don't play us
Yep.
on the radio. Don't."
We're
we
gonna
are
put
not a
fuck in every song just to make sure you don't put it in the radio. Fuck you.
Exactly. We are a band for music enthusiastic people who dissect every fucking aspect of a 3.5 minute song.
Mhm.
And that's what a lot of these bands that we listen to do, and that's why we are drawn to them, I think, because as musicians ourselves, we appreciate that depth of talent and willingness to push boundaries. Correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you're not one of those people, there ain't a damn thing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
Not at all.
Because, and this is probably the third time I've said it, the bands that I was just talking about that I call radio core are still.
We all listen to
we
it
all
once.
I'm
listen
going to be
them at one
honest.
point.
Most of the people that listen to Screaming Evidence are not those people that dissect music
No.
to a high degree.
Exactly.
They're not.
Yep.
They're not.
Yep.
Even though you guys write, and especially nowadays, are writing some really complex shit. But people
We
have
didn't used to,
no.
but now
I-
we
well,
kind
the-
of are. But it's still got the same listenability that our
Exactly.
old stuff did.
I don't
Yes.
think our stuff is that complex, like especially the new Periphery album. The shit I've heard on that,
which we will
has
cover
me
in episode 4.
mind-boggled.
So we will be covering Periphery. In
It's not
episode 4.
anything like that, but I think the just musical style has changed. I think the song structure has pretty much stayed the same for the most part, but the musical style has definitely differed.
Oh yeah.
So what it boils down to is Like Moths to Flames is one of the most talented and
Chris is a badass.
yeah, he is.
And they're amazing live.
Their music craft is so above average and
Shout out Fish.
creative, and you come up with the term, but they do something for me and for you guys that not a lot of bands do, and that's why I think they when they come up on the playlist, you're cranking that shit
It's a
up,
no
and
skip.
it's a no skip.
Yep.
It's a no skip. So
It doesn't even matter what mood I'm in. I listen to a lot of alternative and softer rock. And
shit, we do too.
I'll be-
Matchbox 20, bro.
I'll be in the mood listening to like Commonwealth or
Movements.
movements or something like that,
Thrice.
and then I'll just kind of shuffle my entire playlist, and then something like that'll come on, and I'm banging.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So I will encourage you guys, if any of our listeners out there haven't listened to like Moths to Flames, please go check them out. If you're into dissecting music and really appreciate musicality and musical talent and from each level of the band, I encourage you to go check these guys out and start wherever you want in their discography. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Discography.
Remember, we're from the sticks, y'all.
Yeah, we're from Southern Ohio. I'm sorry. So
He was talking about being in a fucking tractor 10 minutes
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
so-
I'll tell you what I do for a living. I'm a precision agronomist. If anybody knows what that is, let me know, because I doubt very many of you do. So, yeah, from the sticks. So, if you guys are into bands like Era, bands like Periphery, bands like Polaris, I mean, any of that style of metalcore, go check these guys out if you haven't already. You're really going to enjoy them. I promise you that. So, okay. Let's move on to what seems to be everybody's favorite segment, Heavy Metal Hot Takes.
Everybody likes to piss everybody off.
Yeah, so
What the fuck?
I know, right? So, but this one I don't really know if we can consider it a hot take, but it was a great point that this follower suggested, and I want to shout him out. It's at Danny Hudson 54.
What's up, Danny?
What's up?
Danny, thank you so much for this submission, because this is a great topic, and it goes back to the community that we were discussing. And he basically said, the notion for years that metalheads are uneducated devil worshippers. And I think...
Hail Satan!
That's a
the
hey, that's a
critters from
periphery
South Park,
line.
is that where you... Hail Satan!
Hail
Yeah,
Satan's
as
a
I'm
periphery
sitting here
line.
with Psalm 23
I have
tattooed
it on
on
a shirt.
Man.
Hell stand, yeah.
As I sit here with Psalm 23 tattooed on my right arm, across tattooed on my left arm, across around my neck, I really feel this one. I am far from what you would consider a hyper-religious man. And I'm not going to get religious on this podcast, because I'm the type of person that I don't give a fuck what you believe. You are entitled to believe and feel whatever you want. It is not my place to tell you what you should feel, what you should believe in, what you shouldn't believe in, who you should love, who you shouldn't love. I don't care. I have my beliefs. Everyone else has theirs. But I'm a God-fearing man. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And I am a fucking metalhead till the day I die.
I love
And
it.
this concept that metalheads are
Shout out Wolves at the Gate.
elite Christian metalcore band. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole nother topic that I want to discuss on a later episode is Christian metalcore, because it's a fantastic subgenre. But
Oh, it's
this
amazing.
this notion has been around since the early 70s.
Yep.
That metalheads are uneducated devil worshippers. And it started with bands like Kiss, like Black Sabbath, that were very...
Even the Beatles were considered demonic.
Yeah.
You know?
Isn't that crazy to think about?
Yeah.
Back to the 60s. So this idea has been around for decades, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Because if you really dive into metal and all of its subgenres, Did you guys, I know you guys did, but did you listeners out there know that As I Lay Dying is technically a Christian metalcore band? One of the fucking heaviest, most gnarly, disgusting metal bands out there.
August
has
Burns Red.
Christian metalcore. Straight up Christian metalcore.
Yeah.
Memphis Mayfire.
Great guys.
Memphis Mayfire is another one. But some of the heaviest fucking bands that you guys listen to.
Oh, Sleeper.
Oh, Sleeper.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I love Oh, Sleeper. Are Christian metal bands. There is so many Christian influences in this genre that it's not funny. And this idea, started with, back in the 60s and 70s, these kids were listening to rock and roll, and their parents and grandparents called it the devil's music because they were listening to fucking
Yep.
Liberace and Boogie Woogie and shit like that.
I don't even know what that is.
Liberace was a piano player. He was actually probably the greatest piano player of all time, but that's besides the point. So, that generation, the boomers, if you will, were of the belief that rock and roll was the devil's music, and all of this satanic imagery, and you've got Gene Simmons on stage dressed like a demon and spitting blood, and Black Sabbath, the name alone sounds demonic, and the lyrics and the imagery and it was so different from what that generation
Biting heads off of bats.
yeah, for sure. But that generation,
that's metal as fuck.
that generation was just not used to that style of music. So this, you have, in the 80s, you've got the Tipper, the lady's name was Tipper Gore, that was going, as Al Gore's former wife, was going to war with metal music and trying to get it banned or at least labeled to warn people about its content, because they believe that it had demonic influences. You have Dee Snider from Twisted Sister testifying before Congress about how, listen, we're just writing music that people can relate to and have fun. It has nothing to do with the devil or Satanism or anything like that. So, I have always been a firm believer of it, and, it's 2023, and I still hear this today. Oh, God, you listen to that screaming shit, that fucking devil kill the babies music, and I'm like, you really need to listen. And my dad is one of the, I love you, Dad, but my dad is one of those people that's like, oh, that fucking screaming shit, devil music, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, why don't you go Google the lyrics to a song?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like reading a book.
Tell me you can't relate.
Read the story that it's telling you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And you tell me that fucking radio country music you listen to on a daily basis talking about girls and trucks and beer and all this bullshit is telling you a story.
Yep.
So my 2 cents on it, Danny, is I agree with you. It's a stupid ass notion that's been around for 50, 60 years, and it's getting better because the genre has such a big following and fan base. But I think we will still always have somewhat of a negative connotation, and that's fine. I'm cool with it.
Let us be outcasts.
That's fine. I'm perfectly fine with being an outcast. I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about me. Y'all shouldn't give a fuck what anybody thinks about you. So, boys, I'll let you touch on what you think about. And I didn't touch on the uneducated part, so why don't you guys dive into some of the uneducated piece as well?
When you say uneducated, you mean?
Well, that his comment was the notion that metalheads are uneducated devil worshippers, and I'm not exactly sure context-wise what he means by uneducated. But when I think of that statement,
I got it.
How you got it, Tyler? How
got it.
people?
Tyler's smarter than me, so go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
Redbeard.
So, I mean, on the uneducated side of it, look, if you are educated in music, and, part of my musical degree was, I done a few, music theory classes up to, I went 3 levels deep.
Okay.
And I will tell you now that metal music uses more musical concepts of, true composition of music
Mm-hmm.
than almost any other genre out there.
You are hitting it on the head,
look,
dude.
Look,
Yes.
I have heard it said multiple times that metal is just classical music with distortion and guitars.
And speed. Well, not
speed.
even speed.
Well,
Because
I mean,
back then it was fast too.
Yeah, there was a lot of fast stuff there, but it's this, if you're gonna if anyone tries to tell me that metalheads and metal musicians are uneducated musically, look, I understand there's a lot of them out there that go off of just the pure ear of it. You know, they're just listening and playing what sounds right. But without even realizing it, the style, the genre of music demands that you use musical elements that a lot of other genres really are not using. Dynamics, melody, harmony, and song structure. And, I mean, the list goes on. Rhythm, time signatures. How many fucking pop songs do you hear in 7/8 time?
It's the same.
You'll never
damn thing.
fucking hear it. It's all 4/4.
Yep.
You don't
Yep.
even hear pop songs in 3/4 time.
Yep.
Dude, I write in 3/4 time like it's a hobby. I fucking love it.
Yep.
And to say that metalheads are uneducated is absolutely some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard, because they are 100% some of the most educated on music theory out there. And, you know, to kind of continue my take on the message, look, I have a constitutional right to worship whatever fucking God or Satan I feel like worshiping.
Yeah,
So if anyone wants to
Praise
say,
Allah.
if someone says,
Allah.
hey, you know, you're fucking devil worshiping music and blah, 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 hail Satan!
Yeah.
I'll fucking throw a hex on you, bitch. Like,
I used to lean into that shit, dude.
look, I'll
Like,
sacrifice a fucking goat to watch you puke your guts up for 24 hours.
bro,
Shut the fuck up.
I used to lean into that shit because it pissed me off so much, right? I used to get so bent out of shape about people saying, judging me on the music that I listen to. And again, it goes back to the stereotype thing. You're a fucking country boy. You come from a farming background. You should be listening to country music, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, why the fuck why should I be listening to that over what I actually like? Why should, and thank God my dad introduced me to metal, right? Even if it was
Yeah.
80s metal, it was thrash metal. My dad's
Yeah.
a big thrash metal guy. So,
Good man.
yeah, for sure. Big Megadeth.
Wonderful, man.
Big Megadeth guy. Thank you. But my dad introduced me to that shit. And, you know, no, my dad doesn't like metalcore. He doesn't like unclean vocals.
It's completely okay.
And that's fine. He's an older dude. It's all good. But he still cranks up fucking metal music.
yeah.
You know, my dad didn't fit that stereotype. My dad was going to fucking hair metal concerts in the 80s.
I think what's cool
And-
about it, I hope I didn't cut you off, but really
No, go
quick,
ahead.
what I think what's cool about it is, to us and probably the listeners as well, to a lot of people, metal, hard rock, and rock music is a mood to them. To us,
It's a fucking lifestyle.
it's a
dude.
lifestyle.
Well, that's
dude.
because
yeah,
that's how a lot of people
as
listen
people
to
use
music.
as an insult.
yeah.
It's our whole personality.
exactly.
A lot of people listen to music just for the background noise, and that's why.
Yeah.
That's why it's a mood to them.
Country music is background.
That's why
noise for
when you
me.
upload music to Spotify and stuff, you have to literally mark what you feel the mood of your music is while you're doing that, because that's how a lot of people listen to music is what
By mood.
And that just goes into
Which we do as well, but not
Right.
as much, I would say.
Right, but we don't use, especially metal or rock, as background noise.
right.
There's certain bands or groups or artists that I have in my playlist specifically for background noise. And if I want to do that, if I'm cleaning or if I'm working in the garage or doing something like that, I go to genre, country, shuffle. Because I'm not paying, and I love country music, not radio country music, but anyways, I have specific music for that. If I'm in the mood where I want to sit and I want to dissect music and I want to feel, I want to experience music, I listen to metal.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to rock. I listen to alt rock. I listen to new metal. I don't care what it is. It's in that genre, that realm of music. And it's because I understand it. I'm a musician myself. I take inspiration from those kind of bands when I'm playing the guitar and I'm doing different things. So if that makes me uneducated, then I don't know what the fuck some people qualify as educated.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess to finish my take on the hot take is I myself am not a religious person at all. I'm very much the opposite. I don't get into religion. I don't get into Jesus and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with it, but it didn't really make sense to me.
Sure.
But to try to put a religious label on someone for the type, based solely on the type of music they listen to, is some of the most ignorant shit I've ever heard. So to say that I'm uneducated because I listen to a style of music literally makes you ignorant as fuck.
Yeah.
And so the hypocrisy there, to me, is quite humorous. So anytime someone has said anything like that to me, I'm just immediately in my head saying, you are ignorant and uneducated for saying that.
So there you have it. You have someone like me who is a follower of Christ and someone like Tyler who does not feel the same way. And we both agree on the uneducated.
We're all best fucking friends.
And we're all best friends. And that's what music could, because you know what? You know how many conversations Tyler and I have had about religion? Zero. I don't give a fuck what he believes or doesn't believe. He don't give a fuck what I believe or doesn't believe. And that's how I think everybody should be, but we're not going to get political. But it goes back to the whole thing of music is a brotherhood, and it is a community. And metal fans, rock fans are so far from uneducated that it's laughable.
Yeah, I don't have to be religious to listen to Wolves at the Gate and
Appreciate it and love
it and just, I mean, honestly, their music is so fucking good. It's tempted me to be like, is Jesus my boy?
I love God.
Like,
I love God.
Is Jesus my Lord? I mean, am I fucking with Jesus? Hey,
are
stop
they-
fucking with Korean Jesus. He ain't got time for you. Your problems. He's busy with Korean shit. You just sit my ADD ass on a tangent.
So, Preston, tell us, what do you think of that statement?
Do you think we're uneducated devil worshippers?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I'm very appreciative that, was it Danny?
Danny Hudson.
Danny,
yes.
yeah. Danny had brought that up.
And let me
because-
clarify, Danny feels the same way we do. He opposes this notion that we are uneducated devil worshippers.
Yeah, I think something about metal music to all of us, including the listeners, but as well as us three, something about it related to us at a time and place in our life. That for me, it was just about personal experiences that I don't know, as cheesy as it sounds, filled a void for me. And with that void, that metal music or even rock, hard rock, whatever.
Sure.
There's a space that was filled for me. And I didn't give a fuck what they were singing about, what they were talking about. It was how the music, and I said it in the last episode, it was about how the music made me feel.
And that's a perfect example from you because you came from, so before metal, before rock,
Yeah.
you're listening to rap.
Yeah.
I'm listening to country.
Predominantly, yeah.
And I'm listening predominantly country.
Mm-hmm.
And here comes this genre of music that brings you and I together at a very young age and made us best friends because, I mean, we played
I
sports.
had somebody to talk to it about.
We played sports together and all that. But, but at the same time, it's like, bro, our dads used to cart us to each other's houses so we could jam.
Yeah.
And
even
it was
before jamming together, but
yeah, exactly. So we could just listen to fucking music, play video games, and listen to fucking Metallica records when we were 13.
Yeah.
Or 12. You know, it was something that two dudes from completely different backgrounds came together on because the way that a genre of music made us feel.
Yep.
And we instantly were like, that was what was missing from my as cheesy as it sounds, my life.
Yep.
And here we are pushing fucking 30 and we're still feeling that, oh wow, I feel like something's missing. Click, turn this on. I know what's going to fix that.
Yep.
You know,
Turn on distance.
oh God.
That's a whole nother fucking realm, and we already delved into it.
My buddy Metalcore Highlights was talking about Distance, and he said, yeah, y'all said that, and I had to go listen to it. So.
See,
I bet he cried too.
so it goes to show if we hype up something, somebody goes and listens.
Exactly. So
I love it.
So I think we're all in agreement, Danny, that we agree with you, buddy. It's a stupid ass notion that's been around for decades. I don't think it'll ever go away, but you got to get comfortable with it. Thrive in it. It's all good. Who gives a fuck what people think?
Go to a rock or metal show.
Do what I
and look
do.
At all the types
do what
of
I
people
do,
there.
and again, I'm a God fearing man. But when I roll down the street and there's like a bunch of like church people out in front of the courthouse like preaching and shit,
I'm playing Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, no. I'm playing like fucking Arch Enemy or some deathcore shit with the windows rolled all the way down, the music cranking, and I'm fucking headbutting the steering wheel.
Yep.
Because it scares people. And that's why I think a lot of people don't like metal. It's because it makes them uncomfortable. It scares them.
Good.
Stay away from it.
Mm-hmm.
If
It's
you're going to
mine.
be that way.
It's mine. Stay away from it. You're not allowed to have it.
Gatekeeper.
You're not allowed to have it.
Boomer core.
Hey, none of y'all listen to metal because that's my shit.
Exactly. So that was a great topic. So, Preston, you and I have kind of already talked about our hot takes. Tyler, I think you're going to take us on a journey here for the next.
I have a slightly different one now.
You got
but
one?
Go ahead.
Tyler's is going to be really in depth.
This was brought about during the live TikTok before the show.
Which thank you to everyone that joined. Be
Yes.
sure to join us next Sunday too. That was
Definitely.
fucking kick ass. Go ahead.
Definitely. But I got to thinking, because we all listen to different kinds or all these subgenres. I'm sick of hearing about subgenres of music or rock or metal, excuse me. But I don't know if that it would be considered a hot take, but do we realize or do people realize how fucking heavy Breaking Benjamin really is?
No, they don't.
They don't.
Not especially not traditional, the real like elitist gatekeeper metalcore guys. They think that Breaking Benjamin and Godsmack and Crossfade, Seether, Shinedown, what you name it, but especially Breaking Benjamin because they are one
took
of the
it
heaviest.
over.
They consider them divorced dad rock that you know that radio rock that we talked about. But Breaking Benjamin has like 5 or 6 albums that are no skips, and they are heavy as fuck. There's some of them that are just, I mean, their guitar tone is so fucking punchy and Gain. What did we say about Slipknot earlier? Gain, all of it. And,
yeah, all the game.
And not only that, but Breaking Benjamin writes incredible songs. Ben Burnham's
That's the
voice
biggest part
is
about him is their
incredible.
songwriting.
He has such an You hear a Breaking Benjamin song, you know it's them.
Yep.
And I love Breaking Benjamin. I remember jamming that was my favorite band. Them and Godsmack were my favorite bands when I was in like 2nd and 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so I identified with them at a really young age and just kind of stuck with them throughout. And I think that Breaking Benjamin especially gets lumped into, just like you said, a stupid-ass subgenre that they don't belong in, and they don't get nearly enough respect for how heavy they really are.
Yeah, and I mean, even as individual musicians, each of them are really fucking talented. And I mean, we, as Screaming Evidence, we learned So Cold. Breaking
Long
Benjamin,
overdue.
way overdue. So we've been compared to Breaking Benjamin almost since we started with the electric side of things. And so we finally broke down and said, we're going to learn a Breaking Benjamin song. We landed on So Cold because it's so popular. We know that everyone's going to know it.
But it also has
But it's
elements that we
also-
love.
It's almost, difficult to play.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's been a challenge almost for us to put it together, partly because we haven't had an opportunity to practice it enough.
Mm-hmm.
But it was one of those songs where, for me to learn the bass part has taken me a minute, because that dude's not just playing a few notes.
Yeah.
That dude is doing some cool shit. And what's hard for me is being able to do that and do the backup vocals.
Yeah.
So it's pretty difficult for us to play to some extent. It's not the most difficult song that we play because we have originals that are harder to play than that. But I mean, as far as them being considered soft, it's just because they were on the radio.
Mhm.
It's the same thing
Yeah.
with Chevelle.
Yeah. Oh god.
Chevelle
I
is
love Chevelle.
fucking nasty.
I love
Gnarly.
Chevelle.
Yep.
But they're a 3-piece. So
We could do
they're
a whole
only
doing crossfade. We
Yep.
could do a whole fucking episode on Chevelle.
Yeah, they're
Yep.
only doing they're only able to do so much, and they were also somewhat forced to be more radio friendly because they were signed with major labels,
Mhm.
and the whole thing of selling records and getting out from under record contracts and being able to, the whole conversation we had on the first episode. But one thing I appreciate about Breaking Benjamin is even though they never really got soft, there was a change from their first couple of albums, or their first 3 albums, into like some of the stuff after that. What was that one album? Something Dawn.
Dark Before Dawn.
Dark
Yep.
Before Dawn. I was not
2015.
a fan of that. I
Yep.
felt like they got a little soft on that.
Yep.
And then they came out with this most
Ember.
recent album, Ember, and it is fucking nasty.
Yeah, it is.
The only thing keeping it from being a metal album is he's not screaming.
Hot take, I love Dark Before Dawn, but I got a little soft side to me.
I think we all do. No, I think the coolest thing to me about Breaking Benjamin was, from what I remember at least, you had bands, of course, we all love 3 Days Grace, Stained,
Mm-hmm.
Shinedown, Chevelle I'd lump in with
Careful
Breaking
with We
Benjamin.
All.
Yeah, that's true. But and there's bands I'm forgetting, but it was like once Breaking Benjamin came on, they took it all over. It was
Yeah,
Breaking
once
Benjamin and then
Phobia
all those
hit-
bands underneath them.
Once Phobia hit, it was over. Breaking Benjamin was the top band in that realm.
Yeah, and it was just cool to see how.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was just going to say that of the bands that you just named, because I think they're all somewhat comparable. But when I think of and just full disclosure, I'm just not a fan of that subgenre anymore. But I was, and looking back, when I think about Shinedown, Seether, 3 Days Grace, Breaking
Creed.
Benjamin, careful now.
We all love
I'm
Creed.
saying it.
Careful now, because
I wouldn't lump them in.
And that's
into
a
the
big
same
time
group.
frame that we're talking about.
Creed and
Everybody
Stained
knows
and all
that.
of them.
That's a
yeah,
big time
you could
frame.
go like 95 to 2015.
Yeah.
But fucking and Scott Stapp we trust.
Mm.
But Breaking Benjamin to me was easily the best band out of all those guys. And
Yeah.
because when I hear 3 Days Grace, my buddy Quentin is going to hate me. But every one of their fucking songs sounds the same. Every goddamn one of them. And
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I'm a big fan of the earlier stuff.
with Adam Gontier
Mhm.
instead of Matt Walst. I like Matt Walst when he was with My Darkest Days, but yeah, Breaking Benjamin for me was just closer to Godsmack, and I loved Godsmack, and I know a lot of people hate them, and that's fine, but they were just so heavy
Mm-hmm.
that I was just drawn to them more, and like Ben Burnley's scream was like haunting. And it was, bro. And I'm like, oh, this is so fucking different than what I'm hearing on 99.7 The Blitz. You know, and
Yeah.
and they were getting radio play, and I'm like, these dudes are fucking heavy as shit.
Everybody loved them.
And I would
and I saw
stack,
them live, and they put on an incredible show, so that just like added to it.
I would stack their drummer against
I'm
most
so glad you mentioned
against most metal drummers out there, and I would put money that he is a better drummer than
Yes.
that.
most.
So
Yep.
he might be the most talented member of the whole band.
He's a
Musically.
bad motherfucker.
That's a bad. Ben Burnley is a hell of a fucking guitarist,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that he's able to play those fucking sweet ass riffs that they do and sing at the same time with that vocal range and screaming and all that he does is mind blowing to me. But their drummer is like Neil Peart level.
And they're I don't know about that far, but
Oh, I do.
he's a bad motherfucker, and their bass player's no bitch either.
No.
No, he's kind of a bad
And it all
dude.
comes back to songwriting.
Oh, for sure.
Dude, they write amazing fucking songs.
You want to talk about
Amazing.
ballads? How many of those motherfuckers do they have?
Fuck, Dear Agony,
I mean,
from
oh
a
God,
ballad
Dear Agony
standpoint,
is
Dear Agony is
incredible.
amazing. I mean, I know there's a
Do you
ton
remember
of
their
others.
song? It was on the movie 300, Blow Me Away.
Blow me.
That song, I swear to God, I listened to that song 6 fucking million times. I thought I was King Leonidas.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, I was ready to, this is Spartan! I mean, drop kick somebody into
Yep.
a well every time I heard that song. And there was just so many of their jams that I just listened to on repeat and when I was a kid, and that just kind of followed me into adulthood. So I have the utmost respect for them, and that was a great point out of you, Preston. I think that a lot of people don't appreciate how heavy they really are.
Well, and even myself, because as time had went on and I had got into all these other bands, that was a band I slipped away from.
Yeah.
And it came back to it. And of course, probably once we started covering So Cold, which is an
It probably
amazing
made
fucking
you,
song.
It is, and it probably made you go back and start listening to it
Yeah,
again.
and it was
Man.
like, holy shit, this band, I've never lost that love for them. Never. There's other bands that I have, but Breaking Bad, always right here. Right there.
Right there.
Yep.
Say which
Right in the chest. Right in the
No,
chest.
I agree 100%. And that was a great point out of you. I think that they're one of those timeless bands, if you will. That is,
They did it better than anybody else at the time, to me,
Yeah.
to us.
So it's definitely one of those genres that was oversaturated with bands.
Yeah.
There were so many of them at that time that were doing something so similar. But like, and I'm not saying they're, bands like Seether, Shinedown, 3 Days Grace, all those bands that I consider in that same genre or subgenre don't have timeless songs, but the volume of hits
Yeah.
that Breaking Benjamin has is just second to none. So I think that was a great point, Tyler. I know that we gotta get rolling here. You have something that you want to cover, and you got a big ass smile on your face right now. And your hot take last week was enough to make a grown man cry. So and full disclosure, we don't know what the fuck he's about to say. He does not tell us these before the show.
Look, I we have a little sheet here written down to give us a little structure through the show tonight. And next to the hot takes, there's one for Preston, one for Kyler, and we accidentally already touched on them. And next to mine was a blank. And I was like, shit, what are we going to talk about? And as the show went on, I thought of a discussion that we've had before, and I don't know how deep we went with it, but it's a very interesting take on music in general.
Okay.
Oh, shit.
So
It's the pause, and then he paused and then looked at us like I'm about to.
He took
rock
a
y'all's
breath off
shit.
to the side of the microphone. as well.
So look, my hot take is that I believe heavy is a feeling, not a sound. Preston's hype as fuck
Preston
right
is
now.
losing his shit.
Tyler explained this to me probably 2 or 3 years ago, and when he when he said it, I understood it. He didn't have to explain it because of stuff that we listened to together. He said it, and and I knew it from the get-go. I understood it.
Yeah, so to kind of put some context around this, I understand that, some songs are going to sound heavier than others simply because of, the heavier distorted guitars, the punch, the drums, all these things. But when you really think of music in the way that we have described it on this show, it's about feeling and the emotions that are invoked through the music. And I will say there are, look, metal is not the most popular thing that I listen to. I listen to a lot of alternative. I listen to hard rock, soft rock. I even listen to, a lot of these genres you probably wouldn't expect of me. And with that, there are parts in some songs that are not metal at all, that are heavy as fuck. And what I realized is it was the feeling that was invoked when I heard that particular part that was so fucking heavy. And, you know, I think of this and I'm like, the only difference between what this is that I'm hearing and turning it to a metal song that is fucking disgusting is some heavy distorted guitars and a drummer going nuts. And so I will say that heavy, you know, when we're talking about music, heavy is a feeling. It's not a sound. And I think like Moss to Flames was a great example. Their album, The Dark Divine, nothing about the production or the sound of that was heavy.
Yep.
But there were parts in it that were just fucking gross. And so it was the feeling that I felt when I heard that part or I heard that song that was just fucking raunchy. It was heavy as fuck. And there are other things that I've listened to that, again, aren't very metal, and they really weren't intended to be metal in any way, but because of the chords and the harmonies, the eerie harmonies that they'll put in there or something like that, that'll just make it feel really heavy. Or, you know, they'll have the bass guitar turned up and be, you know, riding something there that just makes it feel really heavy. And I literally mean the weight of it.
Yep.
The weight of this song is heavy.
So I'm gonna translate everything that you just said and that I'm about to say. So let's say you're having a conversation with somebody and they're like, man, I'm in a dark place. I'm depressed. I'm not feeling myself. I'm not, you know, they're being vulnerable about them or their mental health or their family or their relationships or whatever it is. What do you typically say to that person a lot?
That's
Man,
heavy, bro.
Man, that's heavy shit, dog. That's
Mhm.
heavy, man. What do
It's
you
a lot
mean
of
by
weight.
that? It means that's a lot of weight. That's a lot of feeling. That's a lot of emotion. So when a song is heavy, it's not simply because it's a hardcore riff or a killer breakdown
Or the gain's all the way up.
or the gains all the way up.
All of it.
It's because it makes you feel the music. It makes you feel the
Weight.
power and the emotion behind what is happening at that point in time in that song. How you interpret it and how you are relating to it. And the thought behind it and the thoughts that it animates in your brain. So you put it perfectly. You know, heavy is a feeling. It is not a sound. And think back to what we just said about Breaking Benjamin. A lot about what we were just saying is because of the feeling
Mm-hmm.
that so many of their songs invoke. Not just because, man, their fucking tone is great or that their drums sound amazing right
Mhm.
there. It's because so much, go listen to Breath.
Yep.
Go listen to Dear Agony. Dear Agony is so fucking heavy. And it's not because it's incredible tone or anything like that or some wild riff. It's because the passion and the emotion behind that song. And I want everybody listening to this to sit back and think about a song that really makes you Distance is
I was about
heavy
to say the
as fuck.
same thing. I was about to say
Distance
the same
is
thing.
heavy as fuck.
Yep.
Go back. Everybody listen.
We should just try to get that as our theme song.
Distance?
I hope to God everybody went and listened to Distance after
If you
the last
haven't,
show.
please go do. Because,
Please.
But seriously, everybody listen. I want you to, when you're done listening to this, I want you to go and find a song that makes you feel certain things. And I want you to listen to it again. And I want you to think about what we just said. And then at the end of that song, you're going to be like, damn, that was heavy as fuck. And it's going to have a whole new meaning for you.
If you can almost physically feel the song pressing on you, it's heavy.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more.
Yep.
But and we're not gonna go any further on that because I really want you guys to experience that for yourself. I want you to.
Well, we haven't heard Preston's.
I honestly do not have anything else to add or other than when that was explained to me, I immediately understood it.
Yeah.
And it was never explained to me that way.
And now you
I
look at
understood
music
it.
completely differently.
Yep.
And
Dude, there's songs by Thrice that are some of the heaviest shit I've
Yep.
ever heard because of the feeling.
yep.
And I think, sorry to interrupt,
No, you're
but I think the reason we had that discussion is I was trying to get you into some of the
Exactly.
softer stuff that I listen to
Yep.
and help you find the piece of it that you can appreciate.
Yep.
That was kind of your gateway into listening to that stuff.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
so because you then understood heaviness as more of a feeling, you started listening to some of the stuff I was sending you, like Thrice and stuff, and being able to appreciate that piece of it. Now you're open more to what else they offer.
And I think a word that would describe heavy in regards to a song would be space. The amount of space in a certain part of a song makes you realize that it's heavy.
It gives you time to compartmentalize and analyze. Space.
Yeah. Yep.
Distance.
Oh shit. Here we go.
So,
And with that, Kyler, what we got?
yeah, guys. So I'm telling you, we keep trying to say, we'll keep it under 2 hours. We get close. Last time we didn't keep it under 2 hours. I'm not sure if we're going to keep it under 2 hours this time. But the reason for that is all good, guys. And if you hang around all the way to the end of this show, we appreciate the shit out of that because we are not here to just give you short little, stories and inputs. No, we're here to take deep dives into music and the stories behind them and the emotion and passion that we have towards them. And I know that our loyal listeners that have been with us since day one feel the same way, and we appreciate the shit out of you guys for that. So, as always, I usually end the show with, some shout outs and some music recommendations for some up and coming artists. And one that I came across on TikTok, I actually came across their guitarist, Jake. The band is called Crooked Royals, and they are out of New Zealand. So these guys, if you are into bands like Periphery, that have Monuments is another great example because Jake reminds me so much of John Brown, and Jake, that is a compliment in the highest form because he is so talented and inventive and writes some of the most mind-boggling riffs and harmonies and melodies that I've heard in a long time. Their songs Counterfeit and Glass Hands are really what I'm hooked on right now. So go check out Crooked Royals. They're on Apple Music. I know that for sure. That's where I listen to my music. So go check those guys out. Again, they're out of New Zealand, and God damn it, are they talented. So I also want to shout out a band called A Farewell Fire. Excuse me. One of their guitarists. His TikTok handle is @Eddie Makes Sounds. I just came across him jamming on TikTok live one night, and this motherfucker absolutely shreds. So I went and checked out their band, and again, man, if you're into that old school metalcore vibe, that Killswitch Engage, All That Remains type feel, go check out A Farewell Fire. Those dudes absolutely fucking shred. So make sure you go check out Screaming Evidence.
Shameless plug again.
Shameless plug, always. And again, a shameless plug for my TikTok channel, @Smoke2013. Give me a follow. Come hang out with us live before we record the pod every Sunday evening. I think we're going to try to go live on TikTok every Sunday evening from now on. As always, send us your requests, your feedback. If you listen to the pod, give us a rating on wherever you listen to it. Give us feedback. We want to hear from you guys. What you think?
True feedback.
Yeah, be transparent. Yep. Be open and honest with us because we want to make this as best of a listening experience for all of you guys. So thank you so much to everybody that's tuning in, and we'll tune in the future. And like we said at the beginning of the show, a lot of big things coming for us, and then that means for you guys too, with the finalized rebrand, website, merch, theme song, all of that. So thank you guys so much, And until next time, we are the Screaming Idiots, and we will see you next week.
Peace, love, dove.